I thought it was going to be. There is a desk there, I'm not just dropping them on the floor, I promise. Alright, women. Women can be hard to locate in history. The pages of our history books are filled with words written by men about the deeds of other men. And when women are mentioned, they're often viewed as more of an accessory to another character. And even these women are almost exclusively drawn from the highest social classes, which makes reconstructing what life was like for most women a rather daunting task. Most women were not born into ancient and powerful families. They did not influence the big events of the day, and their names are not recorded in the annals of history. They lived lives, but they're not often ascribed much agency, so it's all too easy for us to overlook them today. But history is not merely the biographies of great men. It is the inheritance of humanity, and all people have had a hand in making it. After all, what is Rome without its people? A pile of brick and marble with no significance to anyone. And so today we'll take a step into the life of a Roman woman. She had no famous husband and bore no famous sons. She was not a member of the social elite, and she influenced no great and momentous events. She was a businesswoman, an entrepreneur, and eventually the owner of the largest urban property in Pompeii. Welcome everyone, my name is Solomon, and this is Julia Felix. Smacked my mic right there. Hope it's still running. I'm gonna check just to make sure. If you had been walking down the main street through Pompeii in the final years before its fiery doom, you would have been able to read the numerous signs and notices posted on the walls of the buildings that line the road. You would have been able to see political propaganda and declarations of love, quotes from famous poems and body remarks. And you would have been able to see, printed in large letters, an advertisement, promising apartments for lease, commercial space available, and access to luxurious baths, all located in the estate of Julia Felix. Now, Julia Felix is not mentioned anywhere else. This is the only reference to her that we have, but even this short notice can tell us a couple of things about her. For instance, that she was probably unmarried. In ancient Rome, women were often identified using their husband's name if they had one, and their father's if they did not. And on Julia Felix's advertisement, her father's name is given. Some scholars have suggested that she may have even been a bastard, because the name given for her father, Spurius, is not just a name, it's also a Latin adjective that means illegitimate. Though why she would choose to include this in her advertisement is beyond me. But by far, the most interesting part of this advertisement is that it clearly indicates Julia Felix as the owner-operator of the business. Why is this interesting? Because of misogyny. Gets you every time. Ancient written sources are very clear when it comes to this part of Roman law. Women could not themselves control property, even if they personally owned it. They would require a male guardian for any contracts, deals, transactions, anything like that. It's a lot like how we treat children today. They can own things and have a bank account, but it's all managed by their parents. Julia Felix's advertisement does list her father's name, but just as a personal identifier, like a surname. It doesn't indicate that he was in any way involved or even necessarily still alive. But what about the law? Shouldn't she need a male guardian to run this business? Well, here's where we come back to what I said at the beginning. Our ancient written sources talk about the highest levels of society, the 1% of the 1%. It's very possible that the lower classes simply didn't care enough to follow all the same rules as the aristocracy. Throughout history, the aristocracy is played by a different set of rules from the rest of society, in some places to such an extent that they developed an entirely different accent or dialect. I don't think it's at all unreasonable to see that being the case here as well, and many scholars have come to the same conclusion. So what kind of business did Julia Felix actually run? I mentioned a bit of what was on offer earlier, but luckily for us, we can look at it in a lot more detail than that, because Julia Felix's estate was preserved with the rest of Pompeii in the ash of Mount Vesuvius. The crows are going insane out there. They want me to feed them, is what's happening. They can see me in the window. In the 1750s, when Pompeii was first being looted for artifacts to decorate the King of Spain's house, they happened upon a large building complex in Reggio II, right between the amphitheater and the main road, prime real estate. Now, when I say the estate was large, what I really mean is it's fucking massive. At 62,000 square feet, it's the largest urban property we've ever found in the city. Now, granted, only about a third of that space is actually, buildings. The rest is gardens and outdoor space, but still, it's a huge property. Excavations revealed that it wasn't always that big. It was actually the result of merging two separate properties that used to be divided by a narrow road. But in the year 62 AD, Pompeii was hit by a devastating earthquake, causing a ton of damage across the city. In the aftermath of this disaster, a lot of rebuilding and restructuring was done, and as part of that process, these two lots were merged into one. Now, whether or not Julia Felix owned both properties beforehand, we don't know, but she certainly capitalized on the opportunity afterwards, turning what was two modest residential properties into one of the largest in Pompeii and a lucrative business opportunity. In the aftermath of the earthquake, demand for housing shot up as many people's homes had been destroyed in whole or in part. Julia Felix divided her space, creating private rooms for rent and taking advantage of a sudden demand in the market. The upper level of the estate was given over to creating apartments, offered on lease for a period of 5 years as per her advertisement. For the business-minded of Pompeii's population, annexed apartments sitting above commercial space were also available for lease. These street-facing shops are called tavernae and often sold food to customers going about their daily lives. Think like an ancient Roman Timmy's being run out of the side of someone's house. You can almost still hear the sound of someone ordering a magna duplex and complaining about the proper use of Latin grammar. Unfortunately for us, because the apartments are on the upper floors, they didn't preserve with the rest of the estate, so we know little about them save what the rest of the complex can tell us. For example, these apartments were likely aimed towards Pompeii's middle class, people who might have had a little bit of extra money to spend on comforts, but maybe not enough to afford a private domus or the luxuries that come with being wealthy in the Roman Empire. In fact, Julia Felix's entire estate seems to have been fine-tuned to cater to this audience, the Pompeian middle class. The estate's expansive outdoor gardens provide space and a sense of privacy that lower-income apartments didn't have, but that wealthy citizens could afford to provide for themselves. The Romans loved the romanticized idea of rural life and pastoralism. They viewed it as the most noble existence, and the wealthiest Romans went out of their way to associate themselves with it through private gardens and pastoral imagery. Many even owned fancy country villas that they could retreat to LARP as farmers while eating grapes off of a silver platter. Through these shared, semi-private gardens, residents of Julia Felix's estate could get a taste for luxuries that were otherwise unattainable for middle-class citizens. The gardens are huge, making up 2/3 of the total area of the estate. They're divided into two sections, a smaller inner garden and the larger outer garden. Archaeobotanical research into the outer garden showed that it had been largely planted with fruit trees and other edibles. This was an oasis to escape the hustle and bustle of the city, to wander amid nature in the heart of urban life. The inner garden is smaller, but far more manicured. It would have been home to carefully maintained shrubs and flower beds, all centered on a marble-rimmed pond. Here, guests in the estate could enjoy a leisurely stroll around the colonnaded enclosure, admiring the fashionable fourth-style frescoes painted on the walls, discussing the issues of the day in idyllic surroundings, or visiting the small shrine nestled in the corner dedicated to Isis, a deity from Egypt who enjoyed a healthy following in Pompeii. Overlooking these gardens would have been the second-story apartments that Julia Felix rented out, adding to their appeal for those looking for a taste of the finer things. Beneath the colonnade, gazing out into the garden, was an elaborate formal dining area, which the Romans called a Triclinium. Although these seats don't look too comfortable to sit on now, back in the day they would have been covered in soft cushions for comfort. At the back of the Triclinium, water trickled down over the marble steps of a small decorative waterfall, lending a truly luxurious ambiance to the meal. Here, people would recline, eat, and socialize while gazing out at the gardens or admiring the bright paintings surrounding... Oh, right. Remember when I said that when the estate was first excavated, they were basically just looting it for artifacts? Well, this fresco is one of them. It was ripped from the wall and now resides in the Napoli Archaeological Museum. Due to the initially poor 18th century conservation practices, the paintings are not as complete nor as brightly colored as they would have been back in the day, which hurts my heart more than I care to admit. Even still, from the sections we can see today, we can tell how vibrant this painting must have been. The scenes in bright blue depict a romanticized image of life in Egypt along the Nile River. In the 1st century, Roman popular fascination with Egypt was in full swing, so scenes like this would have been very stylish. In addition, the ceiling had been intentionally roughed up to resemble rugged stone, and the whole thing came together to evoke the idea that the diners were sitting in an idyllic little cave in nature, listening to the sound of the gently trickling waterfall while being served fancy, pretentious dishes. Again, this is something that the wealthiest citizens could have afforded to have in their own private homes. Having a triclinium facing onto a garden was a staple feature of Vitruvian architecture and can be found in many of the wealthiest Roman homes. But Julia Felix's clientele weren't the wealthiest citizens. Dining in Julia's Nilotic garden would have been an extravagance, something the middle class indulged in so that they could, if only for one night, experience what it was like to be truly wealthy in the Roman Empire. This brings us to the final service offered at Julia Felix's estate, the bath complex. Going to the baths was a very important part of Roman life. It wasn't just culturally ingrained, it was socially expected of you. Anyone even somewhat respectable would be going to the baths regularly. And though some of the largest houses may have had a private bath, this wasn't a practice limited to the elites. People of all social classes engaged in this activity. Public baths were common across the empire. Even in the small town in Spain that I helped excavate, there is a public bathhouse. Some of these complexes were run by the state and so were free, but many were run for profit and would charge an admittance fee. This is the case for the bathing facilities of Julia Felix, which she describes as fit for the nogentium, which basically just means the baths were really nice. But you may be thinking, how did these baths make any money? Pompeii had several larger bathing complexes that were offered for free. Why would someone pay to bathe here? Well, Julia Felix knew this too, and her baths offered something that the public baths didn't: privacy. If you went to the public baths, you would have to deal with The public. Shock and horror, I know. As anyone who's worked in retail or food service can tell you, dealing with the public can be awful, and this was no different in ancient Rome. But don't take my word for it, the Roman writer Seneca already described the experience of going to the public baths, and I don't think I can do any better, so allow me to read you his description. Just imagine the whole range of voices which can irritate my ears. When the more muscular types are exercising and swinging around lead weights in their hands, and when they're straining themselves or at least pretending to strain, I hear groans. And when they hold their breath for a while and then let it out, I hear hissing and very hoarse gasps. But when I have to put up with an unathletic fellow, one satisfied with a low-class rubdown, I hear the slap of a hand pummeling his shoulders. The sound varies somewhat, depending on whether the hand is flat or cut. Now if a ball player comes along and begins to count his score aloud, I'm definitely finished. Imagine also a quarrelsome drunk, or sometimes a thief caught in the act, or a man who loves to sing in the bath. And then imagine people diving into the pool with a great splash of water. Seneca goes on, but you get the idea. Public baths were loud, busy affairs where everyone rubbed shoulders, and if you could afford it, you might want to pay an admittance fee for a quieter experience where you could truly relax and unwind. Julia Felix offered just that. Her complex is fitted with the three traditional rooms, the caldarium, tepidarium, and frigidarium, the hot room, tepid room, and cold room, and even had a small laconicum, a sweating room, not unlike a sauna. Each room has windows facing out into the garden, allowing guests to enjoy the peace of nature even while bathing. There's even an outdoor swimming pool enclosed within its own yard to allow for the swimmers to have privacy while still enjoying the outdoors. The admittance fee that she charged wasn't really for access to the facility itself, it was for the peace and relaxation that it afforded, a guarantee that the hoi polloi would be kept out. The estate of Julia Felix is a fascinating one. It has all of the comforts of a wealthy private home, fit for society's elites, but at every turn seems to be geared towards a more common audience. It has the latest in artistic trends, with fashionable fourth-style frescoes and scenes from mysterious Egypt, but at the same time it bears distinctly middle-class imagery. The atrium contained a 25-meter-long painting of a market in the Forum, an entirely unique subject that would be out of place in elite company, but extremely relatable to Pompeii's middle class, who could have seen themselves in the art. We see merchants peddling their wares, customers feeling fabrics and buying snacks. The clamor of the market is almost audible. This mix of elite and common is seen nowhere more clearly than in Julia Felix herself. Though the owner of this vast estate and all the amenities we've seen, she had to work for a living. She had no family fortune to live on and supported herself off the profits of her labors. Her estate was huge, but she only lived in a small part of it tucked away in the corner. She had perhaps 10 rooms to herself, centered on a modest Tuscan-style atrium, the walls decorated with still life paintings of foodstuffs and business items. In any other context, these decorations would be unremarkable, but given what we know about Julia Felix's business, it's hard to not see them as an intentional nod to her livelihood, depictions of objects so important to her life. The last question I'd like to ask is, did Julia Felix escape Pompeii during its destruction? Was she able to flee the eruption of Mount Vesuvius and reach safety, perhaps rebuilding her life anew? The answer is truly, we'll never know, but we should talk about one last discovery made in her estate, the body. There is only one set of human remains found across Julia Felix's vast estate, the skeleton of a woman who fell while running across the garden. She had been adorned in gold jewelry when she died, ornate rings, golden earrings, and a necklace dotted with pearls. When she fell, she had been running not towards the safety of the street, but towards the small shrine to the goddess Isis in the corner of the garden, perhaps seeking safety in the divine while the apocalypse rained down around her. There is no way to know whether this woman was Julia Felix or simply an opportunistic looter, scrounging for valuables in the chaos of Pompeii's final hours, but whoever she was, it's clear she didn't make it out. I, for one, think it fitting to believe these are the remains of Julia Felix, and that the estate to which she dedicated her life now stands as a monument to her in death, forever marking the place where she fell. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you stick around for more. If you like this sort of content, consider leaving me an interaction. It helps my channel out, and it helps the algorithm know what type of content to recommend. If you're interested in this topic, I've left a list of sources and recommended readings in the description for you to look at. If you'd like to learn more about the lives of women in ancient Rome, this book, A Rome of One's Own by Dr. Emma Southon, might be for you, not sponsored. There's a chapter in here on Julia Felix, as well as many other characters you may have never encountered. I, for one, had never even heard of Galla Placidia before reading this book. Thanks again, until next time.